The one thing that you that like first popped up in your mind, which is completely right, is you're like, hang on a second. They in that last post they said that they didn't want
This?
nameplates. Oh, you had the asset ready.
Yeah, they didn't
That
want
is-
this.
Whew.
Yeah, this was this boss was not going very well in the first place. And then we had 2 dead because of boss damage. I was low on HP, and we're like, oh, it's over as hell here.
So
It's over here. That's the Ascendance one. So I'm hoping there's maybe something to do with that, but there's like 20 nameplates all casting, drop on your head, and you go,
solutions,
Jesus.
because maybe we are in a time where they're really interested in the community ideas, and I don't mean that as a way that is a knock against them. I mean that, and I guess
SMH were doing their work for them.
well, it's like we come
Sad.
from the programming side, where computer science university, where like rubber ducking is really important, because there's times you'll be stuck in a problem for days. And even if you just have a chat with a friend who kind of knows like programming logic but isn't even working the same problem as you, and sometimes that dialogue solves the problem in your head. So that like the feedback's really important. And I feel like this is them realizing, no, we can actually listen to the community. They're not always going to tell us exactly what the best solution is, but the process of listening and reacting and thinking is kind of like rubber ducking, and it's useful. So if we were to workshop fixes to this, because you're so right, that's a lot of stuff in your screen. Could you half the number of dudes that spawn and double the effect of each?
Easily, yeah. Very easily. That would make it a little bit more thing, because it's very much supposed to be. I mean, it feels designed to be a little bit overwhelming, and it feels designed to be, you need your AoE. But then it really forces you into having your AoE stops and spells, which most people do as a group. But that's the thing where I think they look at this, and it depends on who's working, who's where, but there's definitely a case where they look at what can a group solve versus what a person can solve.
Yeah.
They've looked at this as a what can a group solve, and the answer is any group should realistically be able to solve this. Because AoE stuns, most people have an AoE disrupt or something like that. But it results a little bit like, no, but people can't solve this. And if you go in and you don't have something to solve this, or as an example, as a prot paladin, I don't have many tools to solve this. Obviously, Avenger Shield will interrupt 1. I've got Rebuke to interrupt 1. If I'm really pressed, I probably should be using Divine Toll on cooldown anyway, for, on a boss that's killing me because it's tuned that way, and we've like really low gear in here. Okay, well, I really should be using that on CD for the boss, but if I need to use it to get another interrupt out, then that sucks terribly.
Yeah.
And then there's also, I've got Blinding Light and Hammer Justice. Hammer Justice, 1 stun, okay. Blinding Light, fantastic, AoE, but that's on 90 seconds, and this happens every minute or so. Which means, they certainly, it's supposed to be like, are you supposed to coordinate this? Then why is it an affix coming in why is it so heavy on punishment? And why is it coming in at level 2? You expect group cohesion and group coordination about a 7 or above, not necessarily on 2, I imagine. Please remove this image. This is visual vomit. Okay. I will. Don't worry. Use all interrupts and stuns on orbs. Mob cast something. Wipe equals profit. That's the other problem, where there's times where, I had to run to get an orb, and I was stupid, and the boss hit me in the back and killed me. I'm like, well, I shouldn't have done that as a tank, but also I was the only one to get that, and I didn't want to get that.
One is reminded of quaking in the Ner'zhul dungeon from Shadow Moon, Burial Vaults. There was a space... Burial Grounds, yeah. Burial Vaults.
SPG.
Yeah, the bit where you're fighting the worm boss. The worm boss mechanic is, hey guys, you gotta stand in this patch of goo. And then a quaking appears on the patch of goo, and you're like, cool, guess I'll die.
A stack and the spread happened at the same time. Cool, fantastic, wonderful. So there's definitely a bunch of issues with this. As to get a solution for it, I'm not really super sure. Outside of one of the things you could potentially maybe do, and this is a little unfair for ranged casters, and pity the ranged casters. Everyone know they're so hard done by all the time, getting to stay far away from everything and do more damage to the cons. Anyway, so you could be like you walk over them or you stop them in the same way as basically half the other orbs in the game. Because that's what I was expecting the first time I saw them. I was like, oh, I run over them. Oh, no, I don't. The Razak. I thought, okay. I was expecting it to be a orbs from what is the water swirly boss shithead from
Temple of the Jade?
no from not Coup Defensive, the second boss, the one that killed everyone forever.
Yeah,
week,
big
sort of
swirly
expansion.
whirly.
Yeah, his big swirly orbs that come in. You could maybe do something like that. Maybe.
Yeah.
But the thing is that like this definitely sits right over and right on top of all mechanics because it wasn't coming in at any. It was coming in roughly every minute or so, and that was an
That's
absolute
brutal.
massive pain in the ass for this. For like this boss, the amount of times we died because you could feel it. The boss was doing Voracious Bite, which hits me with a stack where I take double damage. I'm like, oh shit. Well, I have to, I'm really stressed out trying to not die to this. I need to cycle all my defenses given the gear we had. Okay, shit. And then I would like watch, Dakar run over to take some orbs. I'd run to take some orbs. Do I have to run out of my consecration to get orbs? Oh, well, I'm going to die. So if I decide to do that or not, whatever. And then like the healer just didn't heal me for 1 second because the healer was casting Master Spell on the orbs or like a Psychic Scream. I'm like,
Okay.
well, that was a mistake.
So
But yeah.
I think there's a way to get around that.
Yeah, you have to not.
Because the problem is these happen roughly every minute, but so does the dungeon, and who knows what's going on at any point in time. And you could get an intersect that wipes you out. And there's times where that happens and it feels designed. The twin Ogron boss in Heimel, I think it was an example of shifting boss timings that were designed to overlap in ways that presented a specific challenge to the player. That's not the case here. So I guess what they need is some form of overriding logic that controls the spawns, where yes, it is roughly whatever their intended time is. But if you were to imagine a timeline, right? Like a timeline, I don't know, a timeline. And on that timeline, you see all of the enemy casts. You would need a system that says, we don't cast our Orby thing whenever, and then the developers would flag what spells. Or maybe they would be able to flag a certain mob pack. And that would mean that, yep, it's variable, and you gotta be on your toes. But it would be a way for them to cap the downside, because the downside is, and it's unique to this as compared to the Frenzied one, because the Frenzied one's just, they all get Frenzied, that's it.
No extra nameplates, literally just, you might want to change how you're approaching this slightly to not to a new mechanic, but to a new variable on existing mechanics. Whereas this one is, here's new mechanic layered on top. I guess that's the difference in the two.
It's the difference between getting in a car crash because you broke the rules of the road and getting in a car crash because the traffic lights were wrong and the traffic lights caused a collision by telling two cars they can go. And bad timing of that is a bit like the traffic lights having bad timing. And if we think about like principles of fairness and like what is a fair challenge to give a player, I think dealing with a particularly awful timing of that and a bad overlap, that doesn't feel like an intended design. Blizzard talk about how they want healing gameplay to be less reactive, less whack-a-mole, more managed, more controlled, maybe a bit more focusing on the efficiency gameplay, which, I mean, at least personally, that's been the thing in healing that I've always found to be cool. So you think about that principle, that doesn't run, or that principle, or this fails by that principle, because it can give you immediate, unplanned, but worse, unfair reactive gameplay. So they need to fix up that, but they can. You can make it feel less like bullshit and still allow for annoying timings by reducing the total number of them, but increasing their potency. You could do a slight redesign that maybe only has 2 or 3 of them, but instead of being an interrupt, they have a damage shield. But again, you can see ways where if you spend all your stops on these, you could get screwed by a mechanic. Well, if those were to appear, during a bad overlap, where you really can't afford to redirect your damage into the balls, then it just feels unfair. That's the design issue.
Yeah, I think that's obviously something they're aware of because, they're not idiots. They know this does this. And I think that's probably why they elected to test both of these different ones that are very obviously different. Because Ascendant obviously is that, and then Frenzied is obviously, as we said, it's like the rules are slightly changing. The rules aren't, you're not getting a wrench thrown in your face.
Yeah.
It's literally just, here's something you know is going to come and you should work around it in some capacity. So I think it is interesting. See, I kind of get you, Frankenberry, saying, see that as a sort of good issue to have. Do you let the enemy have haste or do you interrupt it and do the mechanic? Yeah, that on paper, theoretically, that is an interesting choice. However, it's also really not.
That's the difference. It's a bit like, some military theory. If you want to really challenge your opponent, what you do is you present them with a dilemma. You don't present them with a problem, you present them with a dilemma, because then that sort of takes up their decision-making capacity, and the more that you throw decisions, the more likely they are to, trip up, fail, and then give you something you can exploit. But that's from a principle that is like more of a zero-sum game, and it's not about fun at all. The job of a game designer is not to, I think...
It's to give you a puzzle to solve, I think. I think making A or B decisions never really feels good.
Yeah, there's a tweet. I think it's from Candace, who used to work in the Warcraft team. I think she went to do Riot stuff under Ghostcrawler, and then I think she moved to another company. But she had this tweet of like, listen, whenever we're doing encounter design, we're designing the boss to be killed by you. We're designing him to... the boss is supposed to lose to you, but sort of lose convincingly. And that's the point. Yeah. So it's a puzzle to solve, and the boss loses convincingly. And that is different from purely challenging your player in that sort of way that I just spoke about the whole don't present your enemy with a direct problem, present them with a dilemma. So in the case of a game, it might be fun. Present the player with a problem to solve. They solve the problem, they move on to the next thing, they feel accomplished. Give them the dilemma of, do I get some haste, or do I put my interrupt where I think I need to put it, but then the enemy gets buffed? That ends up not being as fun. And the adage of game design being about, sort of asking, interesting challenges, problems for your players to solve, that's oft repeated, and rightly so, because it's interesting. But Sid Meier said that, and he was making the Civilization games. Those are different.
Very different games, yes.
Yeah, those are different. And I think actually in some points in the past with Warcraft, specifically in many other games, they almost like, but a game is a series of, of interesting decisions. Not always. Not always.
No, I think it's very interesting how you see different games have those things where, like, obviously you think of like a roguelike or roguelite, I should say, and you've got something, you're picking between 2 or 3 options. Say you're even, say you're in Torghast for some reason, and you're picking between which of the buffs you want. That's a fun decision.
Yeah.
Where like you kind of go, do you want the really good thing or the sort of good thing? And there's a customization as to which is which.
And it's great because it's not as time sensitive. It is a little bit in Torghast, but like the whole point of you can really push that to the limits in a game like Civ, where you present your player with a truly like, oh my god, what the fuck do I do? How do I compute what the right move is? Or are you like in chess or something? And in chess, give your enemy dilemmas, because then, you want them to make a mistake that you then exploit. I guess it's just different in a real-time player punishment scenario, like Mythic Quest Dungeon.
Also in a group thing. A group thing as well. I think the group thing makes it almost like more different. You could make that decision if you had like all of the answers yourself and you knew which way you were going to do. You're going to go, okay, well, if this boss is more haste, I know I have a solution for that. But you can't really make that determination. Say you're a DPS. How do you make that determination? Well, you don't, because you don't know if the tank's going to be able to survive it.
Yeah.
Whereas there's certain cases where you go, well, this is kind of weird, but like, say, all the orbs spawn. Now this is because they give you haste, okay. But I think you need 10 of the orbs to get haste, and you can let 10 go. No, I don't know. You can't dispel the haste buff the enemies get. No, it's a proper debuff, not a magic. So maybe there's a version where you go, okay, well, the boss is at 10%. Orbs are coming in. We're really, and the tank goes, I'm good. Be it a Paladin with Ardent Defender or a Divine Shield or a BDK with Purgator or something going, it's good. I can get 10 orbs, we'll get the haste buff, just focus boss. You could maybe say that. But that's like a group decision, and those are very difficult to make in World of Warcraft. Very fun. Because you can do that in Raid, where, you expect, a decent sort of group cohesion, but you can't expect that in Plus very much because of the I guess the model of doing loads in random people
and in the raid, it's intricately designed and timed. Whereas if it just happens roughly every minute, it's not intricately designed and timed, which means you can't punish the player as much because the punishment or the challenge that you're trying to do is less tailored to the player's scenario, because it's just sort of happening on a timer. Whereas in a boss, that's tightly orchestrated for very good reason. And a lot of the time when bosses end up not being well orchestrated, Gargoyles, penultimate, before Denathrius, that was a great example, at least if memory serves, because that was in the old days. That was a perfect example of, like, sometimes these timers, things would overlap in a way that was unfair, and it wasn't fun.
And it wasn't also intended, really.
Yeah.
That was the whole thing where I think they maybe had pure implementation issues back then, where there's like, yeah, sorry, this boss is bugged and is doing things a little bit. Sorry about that. Whoops. Our bad. Our bad. And they've been very, very clean with that recently, or at least mostly for the most cases, they've been very clean about having their bosses be, mostly linear, mostly on a timer.
So I think our feedback for this is very clear. Overall, I'm really happy with the change. At the very least, I think that this is a more healthy format going forward. And I like the way that under Xal'atath's Bargain, if something doesn't work, they can try something else, swap in a new one. If it's a new expansion or a new season, I'm kind of okay for some of those to be changed up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing where it kind of gives them relative freedom to no longer be kind of going, well, we need to design 1,000 new affixes. Things say, we can make like two more, shuffle them in, whatever, it's fine.
Yeah, because it's really hard whenever you have the two pools of 4, whereas this is one pool of 4, and that really changes up the overlaps. And I guess it's like they get a lot of the benefits of seasonal affixes, not all of them. Like, was it the Prideful one that let you do interesting trash skips or whatever it was called?
Prideful, and also Prideful was it spawned on a percentage based of the clear, so you could time when you hit the 20% mark to get the buff. There was also I can't remember what it was called, but it was the BFA season 4 one, the 8.3. The one where
Shadow Realm and do a trash skip, right?
You get different buffs from each bosses, and you could like go into the Nyalotha to travel through between packs and skip that way, because that was the expansion where they're like, boys, I don't think we should have a rogue in every single group, but people are skipping trash Shroud of Concealment, so we need to put Shroud of Concealment into our affix. And they did it, and everyone went, that was sick. Awaken, that was Awaken. That was sick. Hang on, we just had Awaken season.
I guess the final thing I'll say in this, really quick point, it's just, it gives Xal'atath a bit more exposure in like the player experience.
That was the thing I got super happy about when I saw like how they're doing this. Like, oh, Xal'atath literally shows up in my dungeon and goes, she doesn't say anything in it yet, but I can imagine her going, haha, try this on for size, so-called champions. I'm like, yes.
Yeah, and there's something to be said for exposure. Blizzard, I think, learned a lot of the wrong lessons from the Lich King. And, you move to Cataclysm, you barely see Deathwing.
I don't know how they learned the lesson from Icecrown going, no, Icecrown was too sick, let's never do that again.
Insane. They're like, oh no, players, the Lich King's a Saturday morning cartoon villain with how he appears and goes, I'll get you next time. It didn't feel like that as a player. Because that existed within the backdrop of everything else in Northrend, and the other content paced your exposure to Lich King. In this case, it is pretty present. You'll see it a lot. I still think that's probably a positive, and we're coming off a bit of the story where Farak was cool in cinematics.
Was he?
Or
for some of them, yeah.
His portrayal was cool. Matt Mercer did a good job, but he didn't really, and it was the general problem of this expansion. It didn't feel narratively integrated. So I think like some of that exposure is good, and it might mean that, Mythic Plus player, maybe they don't care about the story, sure, but they know that boss in the next raid tier is the lady who throws shit at them in the Mythic Plus dungeons, in the same way that her flippin' top boy is the 13th Delve boss.
Xerix?
Yeah.
Same way. No, not Xerix. Xerix is the one from the first zone. Sekfir.
I
feel
like we've had a few Zakfirs before.
I think it's just Nerubian names.
Yeah.
They really, really rely on ZX and V a lot. So there is a case where someone is, I can't remember what his name is, But there's someone whose name was a lot like Zakfir in the story, and I was like, hang on, is that the guy that is in the thing? No, it's not the guy in the Delph. Because, you know, what? Okay, I'm just confusing these names up. I'm still upset. I'm still so upset we lost Razageth so early. I liked her a lot more than Frack, and she actually had a presence. Yeah. Because we had Razageth in the story at the start of it. But Razageth in the middle of the story, whenever her and Alex fought. That was cool. And also Razageth annoyed the shit out of us every time we're in a dungeon because of thundering.
She sure did.
And that's what actually worked.
I didn't like thundering, to be clear, but
I thought thundering was great, except for how it felt to play in all the affixes.
Thundering, storming, but maybe if the other affixes weren't there, I'd be happy with storming. And then you'd get all the benefits of Razageth being there in dungeons. So maybe it's just that all those other affixes added a level of cognitive load that just wasn't fun, and that meant that the Razageth thundering just felt like too much.